Hello, hello, and welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, here bringing you awesome conversations with amazing and inspiring people who are out there doing the thing of entrepreneurship, parenting, and or investing. These are the three things that are nearest and dearest to my heart that have caused me the most evolution in my life. So I'm happy to share the people that I get to come across in my path that can leave you a little bit better than we found you at the end of these conversations. Because in this new age of disruption where everything's going haywire, nothing's going back to normal, but the cool thing is that's the opportunity to create something new. I get to do that in these conversations with the people that I get to get inspired by. And so welcome to Rise and Shine, Courtney Fricke. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today and looking forward to what we get into here. Appreciate you having me.
Hell yeah. So I knew we were birds of a feather. I went to a real estate investor conference where you were presenting and you started with like music in your presentation. You're like, if anybody is digging this right now, you're my people. And I was like, right here, this is us. Like I totally dig it. But it was that like authenticity that you were sharing of exactly who you are. There was no filters, no BS. And it really felt like in you giving a presentation and a talk, it felt like I was sitting down to have coffee with you, which is why I was so excited to invite you here to have this conversation. So being that you love music and you started your presentation, what song was it that made me jump out of my seat and want to dance? Do you do this often?
No, I do not do it often, although maybe I should.
You totally
So
should.
yeah, literally, I rewrote that. And look, thank you for bringing me back to that. So I rewrote that presentation. Like when the host of the event, she reached out to me. She said, "Hey, can you come?" I'm like, "Look, I'm booked back to back," and so I literally flew into that conference and spoke twice within 48 hours, and I flew out. So like I was in and out. And obviously on the flight there, I changed my entire presentation. Like that's just what we do to ourselves. And when at the last minute I added, and it was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
Yes.
like the opening soundtrack to that. And it's like, this is my story of all about how my life, yeah. And so basically, because I was sharing my story, right? And so that it was just a fun way to kind of bring into the fact that I was going to be kind of sharing my journey, my progression as a real estate investor. And so, fun little way to get a whole room of a few hundred people, excited.
Listen, you caught me. You hooked me. This is this is how it works. When I host my community, my masterminds, I always start with jamming because that gets us present. Gets us in our bodies. And
Mhm.
I'm like that lady from Grease. That scene from the movie Grease where the secretaries grabs Sonny by the tie and goes, "When I hear music, I just can't make my feet behave." Like that's how I feel when music comes on, especially music I jam to. Another gentleman who did presentations there starts every one of his events with the song Low. And I'm like, dude, these
Oh.
are my people.
That's funny. Yeah, so you're gonna lose me on a lot of culture references because as my wife says, I'm like horrible with that stuff. I will forget a lot of like the cultural references, movies. I like apparently have a long list of stuff I haven't seen, including Grease, but I love that reference. But just bringing down to it, I'm from New Orleans, even though I don't sound like it. So even though you can take me out of New Orleans, you can't take New Orleans out of me, and that is just something where music goes down into our soul. So I just, I love it. I love it. I love what it
That's
makes us do.
that's so cool. And yeah, so being that we connected on that, because music is a universal language to me. You can feel more about someone when you listen to what stirs them. And
Yeah.
I recently was helping a client to create a community, and I asked her what her favorite music was, and she picked something from an opera. And I got the opportunity to like get a window into her soul because of the music she picked when I asked her, "What's your favorite song?" And
Yeah.
so I just love that vibe. And so that captured my attention. And so being able to capture somebody's attention and hold it for a while, it's a special skill that you have that helps you to relate to people and helps people like really kind of track and stay into what it is that you're talking about. And I followed you the whole way through in that presentation. So, for the people at home, what is your passion in life and how does that kind of show up for you in your life and work?
Yeah, look, and I definitely appreciate that because, speaking is one of those things, look, thanks to TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff, it is like we live in the world of 30 to 60 seconds attention spans. And so I'm constantly trying to say, hey, how can I continue a conversation both for myself and the audience to where we stay engaged, right? So as far as what am I passionate about? I mean, I could obviously I can go into specifics, but if you boil Courtney down and really if you get down to it, a lot of my life, and again, it showed up in different industries and in different sectors. But when you boil me down is I truly want to help people. And that has come out in a lot of different ways. Um, and then over time, I've been able to find out that one of the life's biggest secrets to success is helping people. And so then it has not only been a philanthropy type of thing, right? Like where I want to help people, whether I'm volunteering, I used to have a background in missions, different things like that. Um, whether it's on that side, but it's also been in like the wealth building side of my life where I wanted financial independence. I want it to be independent, things like that. And as Zig Ziglar said it best, you can have things you want if you just help enough people get what they want. And that's Zig Ziglar once said that you can have everything you want in life if you just help enough people get what they want. And that's really where my passions have like really progressed was when I really wanted to find things like that financial independence, that time freedom. I learned that I could, helping people wasn't, a detriment to that, that I could actually build wealth and find those freedoms. And it wasn't like basically two separate things. And so, I've really loved that part in that I didn't have to, so many people when they think of money or they think of different things like that, they think that they can't be passionate about it. But I believe it was Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek, he's a great author, really like him. And he said that when you work a lot but it's not something that you care about, that's called stress.
Uh,
But it's when it's something that you actually care about, it's called passion. And so even though, so that's just one of those things that, I have really enjoyed the idea of being able to help people, and I've done it in a lot of different ways throughout my life. Currently, I help people when it comes to real estate specific problems, and things along those lines, but it still boils down to the same premise. It's being able to help people and show up and you know, at the end of the day, be able to lay my head down on my pillow and be like, man, I bettered the world today. And so that's what I'm passionate about.
I mean, how do you get better than that? Like you put your head at the pillow and say, I bettered the world today. Like as I'm listening to you talk about like helping people and specifically in real estate, it brought to mind some of the quid pro quo that a lot of folks, including myself, sometimes get trapped in. And that's if I'm doing something that earns me a living, then it has to be serious. It has to be some other myth of what you think it needs to be. But I shouldn't be having fun. I have to be careful. I have to be judicious. Yes, all those things. But when the judicious and the seriosity, not curiosity, outweigh the desire to like make things work and help other people, that's kind of like I was listening to you. I'm like, I'm taking down some notes here because in doing deals for myself, um, it can be very stressful to try to make all the ends meet and to figure out a solution that works for everybody. But like at the end of the day, it's people helping
Yeah,
other people get things done. And like when you take that out of the equation, it just leaves it empty.
yeah. And really whenever for the longest time, let me share this. For the longest time, I struggled with my like identity in the sense of in the real estate community. Because when you said real estate investor, I'm like, I feel like that's like overarching. That doesn't really give a good description. And I would do a lot of like I would go network in rooms. Like for example, I'm not a real estate agent, but I'd go in rooms with real estate agents and real estate mortgage providers and stuff, and they would all have like these little name tags. And so I would have like, the little like paper one they give you or whatever. And I was like, I should probably get serious. I've been in the business for 10 years. I should probably get a little name tag, right? But I never knew, like, it's not like yes, I have companies, but it's more so my name that I put out there, not my company names. And so I'm like, I don't know what to put on there. And everyone's like, who are you with? What do you do? Again, real estate investor didn't feel sufficient. And so this is actually the what I came up with, and when I had it was a huge aha moment because it took what I'm passionate about and it turned it into a lot of my identity, something that I could really, kind of stand behind and share. And so if you can see this here, so it's like a little name tag, one of those magnetic ones, but it's Courtney Fricke, solutions-based real estate investor. And every single time, I was just kind of thinking through how do I want to tell people what I do. And and by saying that, it's like, oh, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, usually it means that I'm usually no good. I mean, other than just trying to help in any way I can, referrals elsewise. But I do best whenever there's a problem involved with real estate. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I I'm so glad you asked. You ready for a story? Let's sit down. Like,
Yeah.
and so usually we dive into it, right? And so that's been a huge part of that, right? Because like it's like I want to help people, but a huge part of helping people is I have to have a you know I've tried to get better at having a clear message so that people in my life know that I can actually help them or people they know.
Yeah, and it's so important. I had a mentor gosh, almost over a decade ago, and she said the only reason why I can say my life purpose succinctly within 3 or 4 words is because I have thrown out the thousands of other times of the iterations that didn't quite fit, didn't quite work. And the more often you practice talking about what it is that you're up to, you're
Yeah,
actually learning. So you're experimenting. Once you get the idea that you're experimenting, but with connecting and
yeah,
helping people understand what you do, but being more aligned, like, so
yeah,
the more often I talk about the consultress, I talk about that I'm a real estate investor and a business coach and consultant. What is the consultress? And so when I started saying that brand, it
yeah,
took on a life of its own, like you were saying about how it came into your identity.
yeah,
And it allowed, like, understanding that I wasn't just the coach that was going to go and help you to unearth what is next for you and then give you all the inspiration and send you packing. But the consultant side of me that is like business savvy, that understands systems and process and all that. So there's the consulting side, but I wasn't really being prescriptive. So people were
yeah,
confused when I said consultant. They were confused when I said coach. But the minute I started saying the consultress, and people are like, what's that? That sounds like a badass woman. I'm like, yes, also, tell me more. But it allowed me to experience like other people's feelings and like what does resonate. And when I'm talking to people who I can really help, like, what are those words? Because gosh, networking out there, it's not for the faint of heart, because if you feel like you want to be validated saying what you do and everybody's like, I still don't get it.
yeah,
Like, my family was the last in line to be able to understand what I was up to because it wasn't from their frame of reference. I had to
exactly.
recreate a new communication line, a new way of describing things. And I kept feeling rejected because they didn't understand what I was
Yeah,
talking about. But over time and experimenting with saying the right thing to the wrong people, and they're like, oh, well, you're just a enter X, Y, or Z here. I used to feel deflated, but it took lots and lots of experimenting in
yeah,
order to get to that place where my message felt like, ah, clear as a bell to the right people. And don't worry, if your message doesn't resonate with the wrong people, cool, man. That's
yeah,
awesome. That's part of your job, is when you're talking your message to people
yeah,
that, if you're shining shoes, but you're talking about, tornado watching, they're very different, like, worlds. And being able to describe what you do to people who can help, who are jazzed about it too, who have alignment and they're enrolled in that kind of vision. I mean, that's awesome. It sounds like when I heard you speak, and I'm going to just like blow it up a little bit, when you were solving problems with people who were in the mortgage space and in the real estate agent space, like, you became the glue. And then your message started resonating because you could say what you do very clearly. Is that right?
Yeah, so for the longest time, I had a mentor give me a task years ago and said, Courtney, go ask, 5 people in your life, a neighbor, an old classmate on Facebook, a cousin, someone who's not very immediate, and say, hey, based on our relationship, what do you think I do for a living? And the quality of how clear your message is, and will be from, again, not like your spouse knowing what you're doing, right? It's how well will they say, and they all kept coming back, well, aren't you like a real estate agent or something? And I've never been licensed, right? And so they all just associated me with real estate. They thought I bought, helped people buy and sell homes, which I don't. I'm an investor. I buy homes, I stop foreclosures and things like that. And so that really helped me because what it helped me realize was I was too far, too vague. And when your message is too vague, no one knows to pick up the phone and call you or to send their ideal client your way. And that really struck home for me one day when I was getting my hair cut. I'm not I don't want to say like a high maintenance feminine type female, but something like that where I go to the same hair person. I just go to like whatever's convenient. And so, usually you do the song and dance of having a conversation of like, hey, who are you? What do you do? All that while they're doing your hair. And I said, oh yeah, I solve problems tied to real estate. And she goes, wait, what does that mean? And so I usually share stories, right? To display my skill set. I share stories. And she stopped, spun me around. She said, I wish I knew someone like you existed. Last year when I was going through divorce and I lost my house and it like obviously distorted my credit, all these things. I just didn't know like someone like you existed. And then that ultimately became a thing where it said, okay. And it was like during that time, I think in that one week, I had, someone that I knew probably 10 years before who was a single mom. Someone I was on the phone call with someone who said, hey, did you know so and so? She actually got foreclosed on and she lost her house. And I'm like, I wish you would have called me. She was like, well, I didn't know that's what you did. Right. And so there's a level that there's got to be some personal responsibility with your message. If it is too vague, no one's going to know to pick up the phone and call you, and especially not going to know with your ideal client. Right. And so definitely over the last 10 years, I have gone from a like really no message and kind of just blending in with the crowd to I've gotten clearer and clearer. And there's even been messages I've grown up from, right? But I've continued to gotten clearer and clearer on my message so that I can, really go with what I'm passionate and driven about, which is, helping other people in a certain, especially in a certain sector. And that's been a huge game changer for me.
Yeah. And I love what you said about I've evolved from those messages too. So you kept your foot on the gas while you were continuing to iterate. And I think so. Some of the stuff I tend to talk about is like the industrial age versus this new wave of whatever it is we're coming into in this age of disruption. And a lot of the stuff about, be one thing for 50 years and only that one thing. And you have to nail it and you're always working at nailing that. Um, that kind of thinking is going away. So,
Yeah.
but also in our upbringing, in our school systems, we've been taught that like there is a right answer, there is a right way to do this. Repeat it back to me, and you'll be a good student. We have to unlearn some of that as we continue to evolve as entrepreneurs, as investors, as people in this world. We have to be able to have compassion for where we've been, because I know for me, growing up in that system, I always used to look at the kids who were the grade younger than me and go, oh, they are such babies. And like the kids who are 1 year older than me and go, oh my God, they're awesome.
Exactly.
And this is what we internalize and then do to ourselves. Like,
Right.
oh, that message that I had last week, total bogus, but next week it's gonna be awesome. No, that's a conveyor belt myth of time that you just have to kind of stop. As an entrepreneur, you need to accept the evolution that is constant. As you grow and you do new things, you always have access to. You thought you had a base of knowledge when you started. You got in motion, you learned a couple things, and the end didn't look anything like you thought it would, but you have more knowledge now, so you can evolve. So judging ourselves for past iterations, not really the best way to grow and keep yourself motivated to continue to do better and better. So letting that inner grade school person, if that's the thing. Let it go and say, that was cool. And now I'm about to do something that's my next step, and stop seeing it as this like fight to go up a ladder. We're not going up any ladders. We just continue to evolve, emerge, and meet today's challenges so that we can help people solve what today's problems are, because today's problems are not the same problems of 20 years ago or even 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. Exactly. There's got to be grace. I'll say this, point blank, I'll take the person with no message who takes action all day over the person with a message who doesn't take action, right? And because there's a level where when it comes down to your message, it's kind of like marketing and branding, right? But at the end of the day, marketing and branding only is effective when it's tied to doing, right? And so the biggest thing there, absolutely have grace for our former selves. But the biggest thing there is you don't have to have it all figured out. You know, someone once much smarter than me once said that a key to success is having a level of comfortability and familiarity with ambiguity, not having, you know, step 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 figured out before you take step number one. And so maybe you're don't I don't want anyone to get stuck on their message because man, they're like, oh, this isn't as clear or whatever. First of all, get started, take step one, and then, you know, just really step by step getting started and understand that, you know, you can't course correct a parked car, right? Like you can't evolve and grow if you're just standing still, right? And so there's a level that I always just encourage taking that first step, getting out there, because literally so much of my clarity as a real estate investor, and really in essence a business owner, has come from two things. It's been trial and error, so that's the doing part, and those are those iterations of like, you know, really just learning what you really want to be about and what you don't want to be about. And sometimes it can sound great until you get into the muck of it, you know. And then the second part of that is really exposure. It I got exposed to other people, and I remember I was doing business one way for 5 years. And someone introduced me. They were like, you know, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, come to this. You know, down here in the South, we have crawfish boil. So think, you know, barbecue, but with seafood." And it was he was like, "Hey, come to this crawfish boil we're having. I really think you'll like my dad." I was like, "Okay." And so I went, and I remember when I met his dad, something in me stood up and I said, "That is how I want to do business." When I got to hear his stories, when I got, you know, all these different things, and truly meeting that man, his name's Leon Johnson out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, so a little bit over an hour away from me. That changed the trajectory of my business and my real estate investing career. And so that exposure introduced me to a way of doing business that I said, "Hey, I want to emulate that." And so again, my message got clearer through that trial and error, right? Like trying things, figuring out if I like it or not, or if that's really the path I want to go down, but also getting exposed to others who are further down the path to say, "Man, I really like what they're about and what they're doing."
Yeah. Yeah. Hell yeah. And you get to take a piece of
Yeah.
people with you. So as you're
Yeah.
out there experimenting, you know, you're seeing how other people are interacting. And I remember I had a mentor very early on in my career when I was still working in financial services. And he would host a call with all of the financial advisors under his management and would say, this is the call where I get to be your coach, your mentor, and your friend. And I'm like, hold on. Like, I grew up in a retail food business. Like, you did what the boss said, who also happened to be dad. And like, this is the way you're supposed to do it. And his
Yeah.
leadership style was more about like, I want to help you from what I know. I want to mentor you and be able to show you what, not only what I've done, but what I've seen that works. And like,
Yeah.
we get to be on the same page. And that, like, it totally changed how I viewed leadership, because it was the first time I really saw servant leadership.
Yeah.
And that wasn't typical, especially in financial services. I mean, that industry's got a lot of stuff. And big hearts is not one way you generally categorize financial services. But this man changed my life. It was like,
Yeah.
it was my first work dad where I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to be. And so from that moment on, as I learned different things, as I tried on sales, as I, you know, built out different pieces of business, I was consulting for budgets, I was consulting for products at some point, and each piece, I remember him telling me, like, don't run away from stuff, always run towards something. And
Yeah.
those two pieces, God rest his soul, Mark Sieben, but like he taught me how to, he demonstrated for me how servant leadership really works. And I'll
Yeah.
always have those things to take with me. And I've heard from other people when they come back to me, they're like, oh, yeah, you always say that. And I think, you know what? I'm a collective of all of my experiences, of everyone who has poured into me or who has had an
Exactly.
impact or an effect on me, and I get to go out there and put my own stamp on it. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it's as I process this wisdom, I get to live that, and living inside of that authenticity is, I think, the thing that I felt from you from the jump. It was that, like, you're doing the thing that lights you up, and you can't hide it. When you feel people that can't hide it, like, that's, to me, it creates an impact without even word one.
Yeah. Look, and that has been one of the greatest joys of my life, because few people. I think it's Thoreau who was talking about that. Every person has a day that they were, what is it, the day they were born, but then the second day is when they find out why. And so I am thankful for the great privilege of being able to do what I love and I'm passionate about. Um, and and so there's a level that I don't ever want to take that for granted. Now don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean that there's aren't days that I want to quit, or there's days that I struggle and I get stressed, and there's days I've wanted to have a panic attack and all that stuff where it's just, the difficulty isn't, removed. It's just a little bit easier to carry the load because you have a strong connection to the work you're doing, and it allows you when things get hard that you can keep moving forward.
Yeah. Ugh. Amen, lady. I'm so glad that you're here with me, and that we're able to bring this kind of connected conversation and experiences from the road that help to forge us in the person that we show up today, and that will continue to add to who we get to show up as in our next iteration, as we continue to have grace for ourselves and for others as we all walk the path. Um,
Exactly.
so, hats off to you, pun intended. Where can people find you if they want to continue to connect, learn more, see your content, engage with your stuff? Where can people go to get more of this that we've been able to expose here?
Yeah, so, call me a content creator, call me what have you. Really one of my biggest goals is to take, so most of my mentors are the gray-haired, respectfully gray-haired real estate investors who've been investing since the 60s and 70s, really around the creative finance space. And so one of my biggest goals with content creation is to take their message, because they sure as hell don't have a YouTube channel, a TikTok, or an Instagram, or
Right.
whatever. And so, so one of the biggest things is I really just want to carry their message as some of their, I'm a really dedicated student, both of real estate and of these types of mentors, who are not really, again, public. So a lot of my content is around that. So if that's something you guys are interested in, if you go to CourtneyFricke.com, it's really a link tree that has all my resources. So it has all my socials. I'm very, very active on places like Facebook and Instagram, and YouTube as well. That was one of the things that I've actually been putting the most effort into. Um, and I have a podcast as well. And some of those mentors, for example, um, one of them you got to meet at that Ohio meetup, Peter Fortunato. He's my greatest mentor. The guy Leon in Mississippi introduced me to him, and I can never repay him for that. It was huge influence on my life. And I'm thankful I've been able to interview my mentors on my podcast and go to their houses, sit them down, interview them, and talk through decades of wisdom. And so if you go to CourtneyFricke.com, you can see those things. And I'd love to connect with you guys. Reach out, say hey, and know that I'm cheering you on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And we will sing Fresh Prince on the way out.
There
My
you go.
life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to
There
take
you
a
go.
minute, just sit right there. She's going to tell you how she became of the Princess of Bel-Air. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Courtney, for coming and having this amazing conversation. This is Rise and Shine, ladies and gentlemen. We broadcast every single Monday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Click like, subscribe, and never miss another episode again. Let us know in the comments what you really found valuable so we can continue to bring you awesome content, awesome people, and creators so that you can inform your life in this age of disruption and leave this world better than you found it. Because, ladies and gents, that's what we're here to do. Thank you so much. Rise and shine. See you next time, friends. Same bat time and same bat channel. Adios. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.